Welcome into College Football Smothered and Covered. My name is Barrett Sallee. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show here on a Tuesday afternoon. Still rainy here in Metro Atlanta, but it never rains in the world of college football because there is no offseason. Yes, Josh paid at 24/7 says that all the time. I said it first, Josh. And I've told you that. We're still friends, though. Love you, Josh. In this show, we're going to talk about the ESPN/Disney opening slate of games. ESPN/Disney released those on Tuesday morning. And man, week 1/week 0 looks like it is going to be one of the most fantastic opening weekends we've seen in our sport in a very long time. So we'll do that in a minute. But like I say, every single show, hey, you know what? Go listen to everybody. Right here on the Believe Network, there's some fantastic shows. So go check those guys out. They do tremendous work. Like I said, my friend Josh Pate over at 24/7 does a great job. Andy Staples on 3 does a great job. The SDS podcast, Crane and Company, all these guys do fantastic work. And you don't get college football coverage the way you deserve it in the new media, or in the traditional media. So the new media has you covered. So go set up a playlist on Apple Podcasts. You can go through, add us all to your queue, and we'll be right there for all of your podcast needs. So if you're watching, if you're listening, hey, you know what? Go give us 5 stars if you can. Leave a review. We really appreciate reviews here at College Football Smothered and Covered. So it really helps us get bumped up those top charts. And at YouTube as well, please subscribe. Share the show with your friends. A lot of action happening on YouTube. Big things popping over there. We have exclusive game videos from my career as a college football reporter / columnist. A lot of great stuff from the sidelines throughout my career. So go check those out. You can find those on the College Football Smothered and Covered YouTube page. Hey, you know what? BetOnline is your number one source for all things sports this summer, whether it be stats for Major League Baseball or whatever. Major League Baseball lines, you can get NASCAR bets, you can get golf lines. You can get everything over there at BetOnline, whether it be sports news or analysis. And of course, you can get game lines, prop bets, all of that stuff. Just go to betonline.ag. You can do it on your browser. You can do it on your mobile device. You can do it basically wherever you are connected to the internet. Go to betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. And you know what? The season's going to start. Not too far away. I think we're 15 and a half weekends or 15 and a half weeks from opening weekend. And ESPN/Disney released this list. And if you're listening, you can go to the YouTube page and check it out. There's a fancy little graphic that ESPN released. So we're using it here on the show. But let's start in Ireland. Saturday, August 24th, noon. Florida State and Georgia Tech. They get things kicked off, and then later on in week 0, Florida A&M at Norfolk State. But Florida State, Georgia Tech is the one that we're really excited about. 12.5-point favorites are the Seminoles, according to BetOnline. And I talked about this about a month ago on this show, how this is a huge game for Florida State. You might not think it is. It's Georgia Tech, whatever. Haynes King's a good quarterback. Brent, he's done a great job at Georgia Tech. They're not a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. Now, with Florida State, this is going to be a night game. They're going to be over there. They're going to be somewhat, it's an unusual place to start. And so it's going to be tough for Florida State. Plus, new quarterback in DJU, who I still have faith is going to be a pretty good quarterback. You lose Coleman. You lose Johnny Wilson. You lose Trey Benson. You lose Jared Verse. A lot of roster attrition, but a lot of momentum for Mike Norvell. And so that one to me is one of the biggest games of Mike Norvell's career. And I know that's crazy to think that Georgia Tech versus Florida State in week 0 is one of the biggest in Mike Norvell's career. But you want to be a national power. What do you have to do? You have to replace stars with stars. You have to show that the Bama model and the Georgia model is something that you've adopted. And Mike Norvell has a chance to prove that in front of an international audience in Ireland in week 0 against the Georgia Tech team that I think is a lot better than advertised. So it's a big game for Florida State. 12.5 is the line. That's a lot. But I think we'll see what happens down the stretch. This game feels like backdoor cover for the Yellow Jackets. Now, we're not going to talk about Florida A&M and Norfolk State, but opening Thursday night, of course, this game's going to be on ESPN. North Dakota State, of course, the FCS power, going to Colorado to take on Coach Prime. And I would say this is the biggest of the opening Thursday games. And you know what? Colorado might lose. Can you imagine what would happen if Colorado loses? Because why? How could Colorado lose that game? Because North Dakota State's going to get you in a fist fight. They're going to get down to the line of scrimmage. They're going to maul you. They're going to play big boy football. That's how they've become a dynasty. And yes, South Dakota State's kind of gone back and forth with that, but we know what the identity of the Bison is. And it does not match up well for the Buffaloes. It plays right in to their weakness, especially on the offensive line. Now, we've talked about this with Colorado throughout the show since its inception back on February 1st, that, yeah, Colorado's had roster movement all over the place, but Deion told you that was going to happen. It has happened. He has cleared out some of those offensive linemen that were not effective last year and brought in new ones that, quite honestly, can't be much worse, right? But can they be much better? That's the biggest question. And they're going up against the North Dakota State team that doesn't match up well if you're Coach Prime. So opening Thursday, yeah, I know people are sick of Colorado and all the other stuff. And guess what? You're not. You might say you are, but you're not. There's a little thing called search engine optimization, right? I've been a writer for 20 years, 19 years. And over the last 10 SEO, 15 SEO has been a big deal. Was a big deal at Bleacher Report when I was there, big deal at CBS, and the two schools, I should say, that draw the most eyeballs: Colorado, Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and Texas and Arch Manning. Arch Manning, it's true. So you might say you don't care about Colorado versus North Dakota State. You're lying. You do. Okay, we're going to skip by Temple in Oklahoma. First game for SEC, Oklahoma in the SEC on Friday, August 30th. But the late game on Friday, August 30th, 10:30 is pretty interesting to me. And I know it's TCU, it's Stanford on ESPN, and it's opening Friday and all this other stuff, and Stanford in the ACC. But it's Stanford in the ACC. Like, how could you not be somewhat interested in that, especially going up against a TCU team that we've seen in the past, obviously went to a national championship game, well coached by Sonny Dykes, but it's going halfway across the country and is probably going to play on the farm in a raucous-ish environment for the Cardinal. I mean, I cannot be the only person that's excited about that. I know I can't be. Are you? If you are or you aren't, leave a note in the comments section, because, look, I love college football and I love random games. And like we talked about yesterday when I defended the BCS, I like college football for a lot of reasons other than the national championship. And I think TCU and Stanford can be one of those games where, you know what? You're up late on a Friday night. You're excited about the opening weekend of college football. Let's have some fun. Let's get weird. Am I wrong? Probably in the minority, but whatever. All right, now we get down to Saturday. Now, this is, at the SEC and ABC have the deal now, right? It's my former employer, CBS, doesn't have the SEC contract anymore. So you get a bunch of SEC games on ABC on opening weekend. You started off noon in Atlanta in the Aflac kickoff game, Clemson and Georgia. Then you go 3:30 on ABC, Miami at Florida, and then 7:30 Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Yes, Clemson and Georgia is a neutral site game, but ESPN holds the rights. And then, of course, the home games for SEC teams, Miami at Florida and Notre Dame at Texas A&M. So, of course, Disney has the rights to those. I'm a little disappointed that Clemson, Georgia is at noon. And no, it's not because I'm going to that game and have to wake up early. I wake up early every Saturday. I have 2 kids. But isn't this the biggest game of the weekend? Of week 1 as a whole? The answer is yes. It's the biggest weekend. Now, I know Big Noon Saturday has sort of changed how schools, conferences, and TV executives sort of view that noon window because it has been so successful on Fox. But still, Clemson at Georgia is, I think, one of the most impactful games, not just of opening weekend, but probably the entire month of September. Now, yeah, I think the counter argument to that is that Georgia's 12.5-point favorite over Clemson, and it might not be that competitive, but it still matters, right? You're going to see if Clemson can recapture that magic. You're going to see if Cade Klubnik can evolve into a difference maker at quarterback. You're going to see what Georgia looks like after failing to make the college football playoff last year and has a lot of roster attrition. Let's be real. Without Ladd McConkey, without Brock Bowers, there's some questions with the Georgia Bulldogs. I wish it was the night game. Because I think the battle between 2 somewhat traditional rivals, they're not, it's not Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, but they're an hour from each other, so it matters. It kind of sucks. But why? Why is it at noon? Well, it's very simple because the 7:30 game is Notre Dame at Texas A&M. And if you've watched this show, you know how TV executives view Notre Dame. If you can get them, you put them in primetime, period. And Disney/ESPN does not have rights to Notre Dame home games. It does have the right to SEC home games. This game is in College Station, Texas against Texas A&M. So what does ESPN and Disney do? They do what they should do, or what happens everywhere. You put Notre Dame in on primetime. Now, I know folks will say, hey, you know what? Notre Dame sucks or whatever, and they're always overrated, and we've talked about this on the show a lot. No, they're not. They, generally speaking, are properly rated. If they're ranked preseason number 10, they're going to probably finish in the AP top 25 around 13th through 8th or something like that, right? Generally speaking, Notre Dame is exactly what we think they are every single preseason. That game's going to have a lot of hype, but it always drives eyeballs. It's an international program. Notre Dame is an international program. It draws eyeballs nationally, but it also gets eyeballs across the world. So that's why Clemson and Georgia is at noon. Because TV executives know ratings for Notre Dame just shoot through the sky no matter who they're playing. In this case, they're playing Texas A&M, which to me, the most fascinating team outside of Alabama in the SEC. Why? Because Mike Elko only has 2 years of head coaching experience. You have Connor Wegman potentially coming back and becoming a star. He has the talent. He's been injured. We'll see what he can do once he's healthy. He's got great receivers, and he's taking over. Elko's taking over a program that had fallen stale under Jimbo Fisher. I can't wait to watch this game. Not because I think Notre Dame's going to make the playoff, not because I think Mike Elko is going to revitalize Texas A&M in year 1. It's because the atmosphere is going to be incredible. Night game at Kyle Field. If you have not been to Kyle Field at night, do it. It is a must visit in the world of college football, and you get to see just what Notre Dame can be. They generally win the line of scrimmage. They're going to have a star quarterback in Riley Leonard, who, if healthy, is probably one of the top quarterbacks they've had in about 10 years. And they got to win this game. They got to win it. because you can't really afford 3 losses if you're Notre Dame. The schedule is easy, but you can probably only drop 1 more if you're going to make the college football playoff. So all of those things together makes it very obvious why A&M Notre Dame is in primetime and Clemson and Georgia is at noon, even though from a playoff perspective, Clemson and Georgia matters more. But as we've talked about, and if you missed yesterday's show, go back and watch it. The lure of college football has very little to do, at least in my mind, of the national championship. Hey, you know what? Go to breakingt.com/smotheredandcovered, breakingt.com/smotheredandcovered. You can get this great Texas shirt, Hook 'em, with Quinn Ewers. It's an NIL shirt. They've got lots of NIL content over there. And also, they've got viral material. If something happens one night in college football that goes viral, guess what? An hour later, got a shirt up, and it is always fantastic. Go to breakingt.com/smotheredandcovered, breakingt.com/smotheredandcovered. They have you covered. All right. Speaking of Texas, they play Colorado State at 3:30 in week 1. That's on ESPN. We're not going to get deep into that game, but we just promoted Texas, so we might as well mention that their first SEC game is one of these mentioned on ESPN. So is Alabama, Kalen DeBoer against Western Kentucky at night. Fully understand why that is the case. But let's talk about that 3:30 game, Miami versus Florida. It's a show-me game. Miami versus Florida is a show-me game. Both head coaches absolutely have to have it. Have to have it. And it's not just for rivalry's sake, although that absolutely matters. If Mario Cristobal loses to Florida, a Florida team that is downtrodden, I think is the right way to say it, that hot seat's going to be cranked up like a sauna. And if Billy Napier loses to Miami, then he basically, I think, has to run the table into the bye week before the cocktail party, even to keep his job. Whether you believe that should be the case or not, I think that's reality. So that's a show-me game. In fact, when it comes to maybe the most important games in week 1 in terms of the landscape of college football overall, it's that one. Because what happens, the ripple effect, could be huge as to the trajectory of both of those programs, whichever one wins and whichever one loses. I can't wait for that one. I'm going to try to do the double up. I've decided I'm going to try to do the double up. Clemson and Georgia at noon, which helps me out for this double up a lot on Saturday. And then USC and LSU Sunday night in Las Vegas at the big Roomba off the Strip. LSU's a 6-point favorite in this, by the way. Said this before. I'd run away from that as fast as Usain Bolt. There are so many variables in this game that could cause it to go one way or the other. We could be talking about proof that Lincoln Riley is a fraud. We could be talking about LSU's offense being all Jaden Daniels and nothing else. Or we could be talking about both teams actually being college football playoff contenders. But how would we know? That's the beauty of this. It's a throwback to the BCS era where the outcome is going to be massive, but we don't know why. It is going to be phenomenal television. And the idea of LSU fans in Las Vegas, I don't think Vegas has ever run out of alcohol. But those LSU fans are going to make it happen. They're going to try, buddy. They are going to try to make Sin City dry. So it's going to be a wild atmosphere. I love the fact that this is happening. Obviously, we've heard the rumors that Las Vegas is going to get a national championship game sooner rather than later. I think we all expected that. But talk about a dry run for that. You're going to have LSU fans and USC fans there Wednesday night, take Thursday, Friday off of work, party on Saturday, go to the game on Sunday, and fly back home in that Las Vegas haze on Sunday. A little bit of the Las Vegas flu for both of those fan bases, no matter who wins and who loses. So very excited. I think we all knew that. Like, this was not a new development, the announcement that LSU versus USC was going to be Sunday night. I think everybody already knew about that. But just every time you see it, it's just like, oh, hell yes. Let's go. So can't wait to watch that one as well. Then the last one, Boston College at Florida State. Man, Florida State, these first 2 weekends on the road in Ireland in week 0, and then Monday night hosting Boston College in week 1 on Labor Day night. Look, it's Boston College. I think nobody would be excited about that. However, if Florida State beats Georgia Tech, especially if Florida State beats Georgia Tech close in Ireland, what would the narrative be about the Seminoles if they beat Boston College in week 1 on Labor Day night? It'd matter. Maybe not a ton, but it would matter. You go overseas to a very odd situation. You beat an ACC foe, and then you come back the next week, Labor Day night, with all eyes on you, with roster questions still somewhat intact, and you beat another ACC team, and you go 2-0 in conference play to start the season. That'd be a big statement. We might not realize it at the time. I'm certainly going to tell you it's a big statement. But that would be big for Mike Norvell. Man, Florida State getting those stages the first couple of weeks of the season out in Ireland in week 0 and all alone on Labor Day night in week 1. That'll do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Really appreciate you guys checking this show out. A reminder, this show presented by BetOnline. Go over there to betonline.ag. They've got everything you need in terms of sports, stats, game lines, player props, all of that stuff. So go to betonline.ag. No show tomorrow. Got a little family issue. Not an issue. Just medical stuff that I have to take care of for the procedure for my wife. Got to be there, all that stuff. So no show tomorrow. We'll be back Thursday. Until then, enjoy the next couple of days, everybody.